Hello everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to go over 14 tips for grinding XP and speedrunning missions effectively. These tips will be applicable at basically all levels of play from your first mission to your 1000th. Keep in mind that this guide is focused entirely on XP, so things like performance pass points and credits will suffer slightly. However, playing this way will still net you more performance points and credits than any other method. So when it comes to playing the game quickly and efficiently for the purpose of grinding XP, one of the most important things is not just getting through the missions quickly and doing everything there is to do, but also minimizing time that you spend outside of missions or doing things that aren't applicable to getting XP. So the first thing you can do to really optimize your gameplay is take a little bit, sit down, and prep your builds. This means going through all of the classes and putting together at least 2 or 3 builds that will provide something to you for every situation that you could possibly need. Meaning you have a build ready to go for general purpose missions, things like escort missions which are heavily fighting, and then a single target damage build for elimination missions. Since you don't know what you're going to get into and what missions are going to be double XP, you're going to want to have something ready to go for any scenario. So having at least 3 pre-made builds would be nice, but I think you can get away with 2. Personally, I only use 2. And compounding on my previous point, you only get XP from playing missions, so you want to spend as much time as possible playing missions. Meaning, don't spend time in the space rig. A great phrase that I heard in regards to effectively leveling in the season in Diablo 3 was "town is lava." And I think that's very applicable here. The space rig is lava. Act like you got hot feet and get into that drop pod as fast as you can, because every minute and every second that you spend outside of a mission is wasted time. And continuing with our theme of time, the reset clock. If you aren't aware, the missions on the map are changed and reset every 30 minutes. However, if you complete a mission in less than 30 minutes, you can potentially grab the same mission again. This means missions with good modifiers or in favorable biomes that you want to play for the purpose of speed and grinding, if you do them quickly enough, you'll be able to do them multiple times. The best example of this is point extraction, which with an excellent team can be done in around 4 minutes. So if you manage to land a double XP on a point extraction, you can repeat it over and over again before that 30-minute reset happens. Always keep an eye on an actual real-world clock so that you know how long you have until the next reset. This can affect some of your gameplay decisions in ending a mission faster so you can potentially grab the same mission again. Now moving into actual gameplay. Let's talk about modifiers. The only modifiers that I would harshly avoid for the purpose of playing for speed is low oxygen and haunted cave. Now these modifiers do have a decent chance of causing you to fail a mission, but that's not my main purpose. Low oxygen causes you to wait on the mule. Cut and dry, Molly is slower than you are moving at full tilt, and if you're having to wait on her to catch up with you so that you don't literally die, that's an issue. Low oxygen has less of an effect on things like point extraction refinery, especially if you're a fast moving class like RJ250 engineer or scout, as you'll be able to re-ox at the rig very quickly and just put supply pods around the perimeter to re-ox yourself. Haunted can be much more of an issue in that the ghost can push you off of objectives and cause you to waste time kiting it away. So even while it's a 30% boost at the end of the mission, I try to avoid ghosts whenever possible, unless they're on double XP missions. And on the other side of the spectrum, rich atmosphere and critical weakness are extremely good modifiers to have on missions that you want to play quickly. However, there is the intrinsic downside of the fact that if your positive modifier is critical weakness or rich atmosphere, obviously it's not going to be double XP. But if there's no double XPs on the map or available to you in any way, then taking a critical weakness or rich atmosphere mission can yield some pretty quick clears. That being said though, missions with negative mutators give you more XP overall, so you should always prioritize doing a mission with a negative modifier before a mission with only a positive one. And that segues us very nicely into our next point. In order of priority, you should always focus on taking double XP missions first. This is pretty much a no-brainer. If you want XP, you want to do the missions that give you twice as much XP. But if you don't have a double XP available, you want to focus on missions with negative warnings. Different negative warnings give different hazard bonus scaling. Some are only 15%, while others are all the way up to 30. So the general priority when you look at the map to choose the next mission is double XP, then 30% warnings, then any warnings at all that have positive mutators on them as well that could potentially make them easier, then just negative warnings, and then only positive warnings. Particularly the positive warnings that will give you an edge and complete the mission faster, like critical weakness or rich atmosphere that we talked about before. Mineral mania is also something to consider if you're also trying to integrate farming credits, but since this video is purely about farming XP, mineral mania is getting pushed to the side. However, in my personal gameplay, I will always take Mineral Mania if there's no double XPs available. Now continuing on the theme of gameplay tips, putting secondary objectives into the pod. I'd say that in more than 50% of my missions, I finish the primary objective before the secondary. This varies widely based on mission type, but point extraction is an extreme outlier where you almost always get all the quarks before any secondary objective. For this reason, you want to call the pod as soon as possible, even if the secondary isn't completed. You can always deposit the secondary objective into the side of the pod with the exception of gunk seeds, as they're very annoying and obviously you can only carry one at a time. So if you're more than halfway done with the secondary objective, I would absolutely just smash the button, get the pod in, and have your scout or a highly mobile class go find the rest of the secondary objectives while Molly is making the trek back. Likewise, there's an even more prevalent example of this on things like refinery and point extraction, where there is a long window of time where you can do nothing but wait for the pod to arrive. This window of time is usually completely wasted and you're just sitting around waiting for the pod to show up, so if anything, you should deliberately skip secondaries and focus on the primary in these two mission types. Now let's get into more meta gameplay related stuff. When it comes to running a public lobby for speedrunning and XP farming. Obviously, best results will come from running with friends or people that you have an established team with for the purpose of going fast. You can use the LFG channel over in my Discord for speed play games, by the way. You're always going to do better with a like-minded team going in, because a lot of people in public aren't going to understand the concept of playing missions quickly and might want to do things in a very inefficient way. And this is a great example of kind of having to be a little more standoffish than usual in this context. If you want to grind XP effectively in a public lobby, you're going to have to be the bad guy sometimes. We'll get into the specifics more in a little bit, but a lot of things that people do in their ordinary gameplay are things that you're going to want to avoid like the plague for the purpose of speedrunning. This can produce some pretty strong reactions from certain individuals, so just be prepared for verbal protesting and potentially griefing. Although these events are usually pretty few and far between. Continuing on the topic of player politics is when it comes to things being your job. There's certainly a stigma in this game that any mineral that's more than a few feet off the ground is the scout's responsibility, and only drillers should be drilling through dirt walls. However, I challenge everyone to actually get out of your role and do things yourself. Gunner should zipline his way up to veins, engineer should platform his way up likewise, driller can drill his way up, anyone can dig through a dirt wall, and anyone can fight. Obviously, some classes are more effective in certain areas than others, but if you find yourself sitting there with your hands in your pockets not doing anything productive because you're waiting on the driller to come drill through a dirt wall, you're messing up. Likewise, if you see anyone else doing the same thing, try to make a spot correction. Now, as I mentioned before, there's a few ways that you're going to be playing differently in a speedrunning lobby, and these things are things that people might have protests about. The main bullet points here is skipping gold and skipping data deposits. Pound for pound, minute for minute, it's not worth the time that it takes to swing your pickaxe and mine minerals. Unfortunately, gold is the odd man out in that it has no use other than providing credits and XP, and unfortunately, that amount of credits and XP is completely negligible. Nitra gives you resupply drops, crafting minerals can be sold for an extreme profit, Morkite is obviously essential for objectives, same thing with Dystrum, so all of these have an alternative purpose, however gold is just extra. And unfortunately, that extra you get is pennies on the dollar. I would liken the level of disproportionality to stopping on the way home from your six-figure office job to pick up pennies at a bus stop. Sure, it's extra, but it's really not worth your time. So you're much better off, especially in the topic of efficiency, to just skip gold outright. This will cause you great strife and interpersonal issues, so I recommend qualifying your lobby name, or in a different way that we'll go into in a little bit later, so that new players joining your game understand that there's no dwarven RP going on and they don't need to shoot at you and call you a leaf lover. Can't wait for this comment section to be full of "you're not a real dwarf" comments as well. But I digress. The next thing that you should skip is data deposits. If you aren't aware, prospectors and data deposits both drop data cells. These cells give you a bonus of performance pass points at the end of the mission, as well as if it's one of your first 10 that you've collected, it'll give you one script. However, once you've completed the pass and collected those 10 extra scripts, these things are essentially only worth 600 XP and a few hundred credits. For this reason, the time that it takes to clear a data deposit or kill a prospector is extremely low value compared to everything else you can do in the game. So if possible, you should also avoid prospectors. However, just due to the nature of them and how easy they are to trip, I usually still fight prospectors, just to prevent the combat threat from threatening my team at a later time, such as when we're fighting a dreadnought or a core lock or something like that. It's just better to get it out of the way since prospectors are basically inevitable. However, data deposits, you have much more agency in choosing to ignore them. Just to qualify this a little bit better, machine events are worth 2,000 to 3,000 XP depending on the scaling, and take the same if not less time than a data deposit, as well as being much easier. Yes, Omen is easier than a data deposit, don't at me. Point being, the issue with data deposits and prospectors is they're not considered tertiary events like machine events. They only give you XP for the data cell. If prospector data deposits and prospectors themselves were to be considered a tertiary objective and give you that 2,000 to 3,000 XP, then it would probably be worth it, even though it's still the hardest event in the game. But as it stands, data deposits are absolutely not worth doing, and prospectors should be avoided if possible. However, for the sake of the safety of your team, probably just take out the prospector. Once again, it's important to clarify to players joining your game that you're going to be skipping data deposits, and if they do have any gripes about their performance pass and the fact that they haven't finished it yet, just remind them that clearing missions faster with you will net them just as many, if not more, performance points at the end of the day. And in the same vein of robot-related activities not being worth your time, the only mission that you ever shouldn't play for the purpose of grinding is Industrial Sabotage. As it stands in the current balance of the game, it's absolutely not worth the time it takes to clear XP wise. Even with double XP, this mission takes far too long for you to even break even on the 1-to-1 ratio. Escort used to be pretty bad about this as well, however with some recent changes it's been made a lot more viable, and double XP escorts can actually be pretty lucrative now. You can farm XP pretty quickly and efficiently in solo, however, always the best way is going to be 4 competent players playing co-op together. 4 people pushing the objective at the same time is always going to be faster than 1, even if the scaling makes it a little bit harder. Solo is still a great place to learn to play quickly and efficiently though, as it gets you well acquainted with the macro game and everything that needs to be done to complete a mission. So think of solo more as training when it comes to speed play and XP grinding. This is why it's very important to know how to run a public lobby when it comes to speed and efficiency, because even with a loosely cohesive team, it's still going to be faster than playing solo, unless you're just cracked like me. Likewise, you should play on the highest hazard that you can comfortably beat in a reasonable amount of time. If you're struggling your way through Hazard 5s, it would probably be best to drop down to Hazard 4 for the sake of speed farming purposes. And I would say for a great amount of players that the most comfortable and efficient farming difficulty would be Hazard 4, as Hazard 5 played extremely quickly and tripping multiple objectives at a time can spawn a really overwhelming amount of bugs, which can slow you down enough to drag you down so that Hazard 4 would almost be more valuable time-wise, not just in regards to pressure. But at the end of the day, Hazard 5 is worth more on paper, so as long as you can clear it as quickly as a Hazard 4, you're going to be getting more from it. And lastly, I'll go over some helpful mods that can assist you in running effective speedrun lobbies. First, and probably most visually impressive, we have Rancor's Rig HUD. I hope I pronounced his name right. In essence, this displays every mission with a mutator on the right side of your screen whenever you're in the space rig. This will obviously show you which missions are double XP and where they're located, meaning you can quickly snap open the map and go to the location, pick it, and then go get into the drop pod. This prevents you from having to manually click through each region in hopes that there's a double XP. And since you should always be playing missions with modifiers, Rancor's Rig HUD will essentially show you every mission that you might want to play. Extra little tip in here, if you press the terrain scanner button anywhere in the space rig, you can open the mission map. Additionally, you can navigate this map using left and right click. Left click to zoom in, obviously, and right click to zoom back out. This can allow you to more quickly navigate the menu and select different planetary regions. The right click trick works with pretty much all UI in the space rig, by the way, and the pause menu in game. Second, we have Simple Mission Timer. This one is as simple as the name says. It just puts a timer on your screen that tells you the time of the current mission, so you can know how you're doing on timing and pacing without having to open the pause menu. I highly recommend moving this off to the side so it's not so directly in your field of view, but as you can see, I have mine in the top right, and it's very nice to know how long my missions are running. It gives me just a general idea of whenever I should pump the brakes a little bit or whenever I should step on the gas. Message of the day. As I mentioned before about wanting to give players joining your game information about what you're doing, like playing quickly, skipping gold, skipping data deposit, or just issuing them any sort of general information as well as welcoming to the game, the Message of the Day mod is extremely useful for this, as it will automatically post a message once the player loads into the game and their UI snaps in. This will also let you see the player level of people when they join you while you're already in a mission, which is something that's not normally possible without returning to the space rig. And finally, a mod that just came out extremely recently, which I barely had a chance to use so far, Combined Resources. This will give you a small piece of HUD in the bottom middle of your screen, telling you the total inventory of your entire team that's undeposited. Meaning that if someone's carrying a secondary objective item, it'll tell you. This is extremely helpful for not having to waste time asking people in chat if you're good to press the button because they have the secondary objectives already to put into the pod. Additionally, whenever the pod has been called and everyone's fanned out looking for the secondaries to deposit once it lands, you'll instantly know whenever someone acquires the ones that you need. And as a cherry on top, all of these mods are verified, so you can run them even if you're not hosting your own game. I made another video on mods that I typically use that are just general quality of life things, but most of those don't really apply so much to speedrunning. And now a really small tip for how to end your missions more quickly. Once everyone steps into the zone inside of the drop pod and you lose control of your character and your weapons are put away, you can actually abort the mission to end it more quickly. This will still count as a mission completion, you'll get the full survival bonus, and everything will be as normal. However, the long-winded rising of the drop pod before you fade out into the completion screen will be cut extremely short. It's very minor, it saves you a few seconds here or there, but it will stack up if you use it hundreds of times. Just make sure everyone steps into the zone before you abort the mission, or you will still fail. And that about does it for my tips for speedrunning and XP farming. Everything I told you here should be applied mainly in your own games. Don't go into other people's lobbies and try to drag them along at your pace. And likewise, if someone wants to go faster than you're comfortable playing with, then maybe you should step it up or find somewhere else to play. We all play at different paces, so if there's an extreme discrepancy between the host of the game that you're playing in and the way you want to play, you might be better off just hosting your own game. But I digress. That's all I have for you today. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to get more tips about Deep Rock Galactic, you should probably subscribe. Leave me a like if you enjoyed or learned anything from this video. If you'd like to catch me live, I do stream over on Twitch. If you want to talk to me and tell me I should be mining gold no matter what, you can find me in my community over on Discord. And as always, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.